All right, story time. So I actually have some stories this week. This is a story about a famous rapper who's buying like 100,000 piece of artwork, and then this guy starts offering him all these black market rare items. And the rapper goes to see what this guy has and goes to scope the place out. So the rapper decides that he's going to actually steal all these black market items from this guy. But in the process of stealing all these items, he finds out that this guy's a cop, and he this forces him to make a decision. So he decides to rip off the joint anyway. And, and then what happens is like they go to sell the stuff, and they do sell it, but they sell it to a different cop, and the cop knows that they sold stolen stuff to him. So now after they get away from stealing the stuff, they have to get away. They they make themselves. They tell the cops who they are by selling them back the stolen stuff. So and so now the cops come after the rapper and his friends. So how do you get always from the cops? How do you save your friends and get rid of all the stuff? How do you make money still, even through all this hectic carnage while it's going on? Yeah, exactly. How do you get away from the cops? How do you save your friends? And how do you make money while all this is going down? Right. So it's about a famous rapper who gets into some art scandals. This one's about Kiko the slave. It's a slave story. It's about a so Kiko is a word that this story doesn't use words. It uses grunts, like slave grunts, and then like empire grunts. And Kiko's just a word that one of the slave kids like, um, kind of like the light, the shining light that's always happy and always good and makes everybody around him feel good. Every time he'd do something or another, he'd say Kiko, and he'd even say it to the Empire, where the slaves wouldn't talk to the Empire, and he's and anyway, so Kiko's the name of the. You kind of call the kid Kiko because of what Kiko, but that's because he says Kiko, not because that's his real name. And so yeah, Kiko's about doing like pretty much he's like a good thing in a bad place. He's pretty much always the shining light. Not always the shining light, but when he becomes a shining light, he's not like he's not discriminative. He's like a kid that loves everyone and loves everything. So it's like he's a shining light and a good thing in a bad place. And then the soldiers even begin calling him Kiko because some of the events that you end up that you can decide that he does. And so the thing is that what happens is that people get in a hectic fight, and one of the soldiers takes it out on Kiko and kills Kiko. And so what happens is you establish these grunts throughout the story of Kiko, and you have a soldier. When the soldiers go to kill, or the Empire goes to kill the slaves, they have a grunt that you kind of recognize as a killer type grunt. And what happens is that after when the slaves uprise against the Empire for killing Kiko, the slaves, this is the first time that the slaves utter an Empire word, and they call him killer. And they call him the killer word, so that's one of the ideas to have it. And so yeah, that's if you can do like it's kind of like Passion of the Christ without any words or something like that. Exactly, an old slave story. So this one's a bit more farther. As anyway, at the grocery store, and Mother Smuckers, Mother Smuckers, and Sun Off the Beach. That's a sun off the beach. So those are some clean swears for you, Mother Smuckers. Oh, so I'm looking for a me to run the company, somebody who's going to be a me to run the company, who does everything and sees this does a lot for a lot of people and sees that this does a lot for a lot of people and wants to keep it in good health and keep it running, keep it growing, and keep helping lots and lots of people. Now, when you look at me and all the winners from my jobs and inventions and ideas, the collection of all of us is the community, and these are the people that I want to keep that like it's not guaranteed they'll stay around me, right? So I think it's really, I want to work really hard at keeping us a community of these winners of the ideas and inventions and research and so forth, keeping them a community, because it's the collection of us that matters. It's the collection of all of us working for the social standards that we would all agree to, right? So, oh, so this is about negotiations. One of the things that I wanted to do is get somebody who's good at negotiations. And so when you're negotiating with the side, there's like some things that you expect from this side and some things that you expect from another side. And when you introduce these sort of like wants and stuff, you get like negative and bad things, bad reactions from both sides. You can get a bad reaction from both sides. And what I'm trying to do is not introduce something that would introduce a bad reaction. That's what I think I'm writing about here. Yeah, yeah, I'd have to read this. I'd have to read this through and go through this to see what I mean. But it's kind of like if you're to filter out the negatives, if you're to go through your actions and filter out what's going to induce negatives, like um, not just negative reaction, because an action induces a number of reactions. Like there's positive, negatives, mild, you know, funny things even. You know what I mean? There's like a whole picture of things. There's never one feeling. It's always a picture of feelings. But it's kind of like if you tried not to be rude in some ways, or if you tried to be all good, if you tried to have everything all good, how do we have to behave so everything's all good when we negotiate and stuff like that? So that's essentially what that's trying to figure out, I think. But oh, how the sword and the stone. The sword and the stone. The interesting thing about the sword and the stone is how it can be anybody. Um, because essentially when you pull the sword out of the stone, it's the gods of alchemy and the gods of politics and the gods of magics and the gods of metallurgy and stuff like that that help you run the world. So the sword of the stone could absolutely be anybody because they're going to help you run the world, right? These gods are going to help you run the world. It's the gods who make it magical. It's the gods around that are going to do this and make it magical, and that's why, in a way, anyone is good enough. You know what I mean? So, in a way. Oh yeah, I come from a generation that thought we'd have hoverboards like Back to the Future before the year 2000, right? So we're a disappointed technological generation. So, well, this is about working with forces. So, this is about creating forces. One way to create a force is to create or find an imbalance and then try to stress that imbalance. When you stress that imbalance, hopefully you'll create a force. And if you find these imbalances and these situations, you can create a design for like a particle imbalance. You could create a component or a device that creates an imbalance and then another device that stresses a balance further and hopes to create a force. So one of the stories that I had behind your back here in the house was about Saint Francis, and this is about a serial killer who he keeps his victims alive. He stretches their bodies across the room, and he keeps them alive with the medicals. He's medical miracles. So he's a miracle to medical science, just like Frankenstein with the machine head. This guy's the same way. He's like a biological version of the interdimensional machine head. So he keeps people alive. You know, he keeps the heart pumping, and then he puts an artificial super heart that he developed in a military experiment to keep your heart pumping, so it pumps your blood all the way across the room and keeps you alive as he rips apart your body and mangles your body and mixes it with animals and stuff like that. And he becomes like an idol to society because his murders and his murder victims are like medical marvels. People are amazed at how he can perform all these disgusting feats of torture and keep somebody alive. So, and this is where like Frankenstein, my uncle Frank, my Frankenstein, you know, he goes into a stage where he has a titanium heart, where he's got an iron heart, you know, he's got a heart made out of like biological metals, if there's such a thing, that you know still works with the nervous system and still works with the rest of the systems of the bodies. You know, exactly. He's got like he's like built like a tank, right? So I have a couple more things here. This one's about cinnamon pussy lips. This one's about there's a penis in my taters. And this one's about, oh yeah, this one's a good one. Hormonically infused meat sauce for blowjobs. So just think of some really, really good meat sauce that is like active on your hormonic level. And yeah, just like the cinnamon pussy lips.